Hello, and welcome to the Chez podcast on Paris Underground Radio.
I'm Emily Monaco, fungus expert and professional consumer of cheese.
And I'm your resident wine expert, Caroline Connor.
And we both live in France, where wine and cheese are cornerstones of almost every meal, from the day-to-day to the extraordinary.
At Chez, we feature recipes submitted by home cooks like you and pair them with the perfect wine and the most complimentary cheese.
This week's recipe is actually two recipes sent to us by Camilla Furman. She has shared her foie gras deviled eggs and Provençal millefeuille.
Hello, my name is Camilla, and I am a home cook. My husband just thinks that it's the greatest cooking ever. He'd rather be home than go to a restaurant, which I take as a great compliment. But I know for a fact that it's not really true. I probably know just enough to be dangerous. But I do have some recipes that, because of quarantine, we've been forced to do different things than we're used to. A lot of us maybe bought extra food thinking the grocery stores wouldn't be able to deliver or there was going to be a shortage, which did happen. We did have a shortage of eggs, for example. So there was things that had to happen. For me, I made a brownie recipe that used one egg, for example. But then, you want to kind of tweak things and put your own twist on things. So I did a lot of tweaking and twisting and making up my own additions to recipes. My biggest recipe claim, though, is making a millefeuille, which means 1,000 layers of Provençal vegetables. Living in France, we have wonderful produce and wonderful things to buy at the markets. And I can't really eat lasagna like I would like to every day. So I instead tried to make a vegetable lasagna. But when I was making it, of course, my tweaking presented itself with this new millefeuille of Provençal vegetables. So I take aubergine, which is eggplant, and roasted red peppers. In the next layer, I put in some shredded duck, but you could do it with beef or lamb or, whatever protein you wanted, really. But I really like the shredded duck. And I season everything very well. I put in a layer of a mushroom spinach cream sauce and then layer it with some grilled zucchini and some tomato slices or chopped tomatoes, and then top it again with another round of eggplant. When I serve it with a ratatouille and a puree of celery root, and it's really just delicious, topped with Parmesan cheese and a beautiful basil top. So that's kind of my signature dish. It's something I made up for a dinner party that I did. And I also served a deviled egg. In France, the foie gras is a real specialty, and it's a really special thing to serve, especially around the holidays. But I didn't want to serve just any foie gras. So I took the foie gras and I blended it with the egg yolk and made a yolky foie gras that I piped into the egg half. And then I topped it with those little pearls that you can buy, those gastronomic pearls of flavors. And I used the raspberry flavor. Oh my gosh, they were absolutely delicious and a huge hit. Everyone really liked it. And I've never seen anyone else do it. So I'm going to claim this as another one of my made-up recipes. I love cooking and I love playing the chopped kitchen in my own kitchen and just looking what's in the refrigerator and putting something new together. Anyways, I hope everyone else enjoys their kitchen experiences and has things to share as well.
So thank you so much, Camilla, for those recipes. I think they're super interesting and particularly interesting in their contrast. So we have these foie gras deviled eggs that are really rich and decadent with those raspberry flavor pearls that are going to add a touch of acidity and sort of lightness and fruitiness. And then you have the Provençal millefeuille with this interesting blend of like the sweetness and the acidity from the tomatoes and the other vegetables. But then you do still have that richness from the duck and this mushroom spinach cream sauce.
Yum.
Right? So, I mean, it's like you're bringing a restaurant home, which is, what we were all forced to do during lockdown. Or if you were me, just like eating a phenomenal amount of macaroni and cheese.
Mm-hmm. I smell that shit from
right?
America.
God, that neon orange flavor powder is like crack.
It's so good.
So good.
So good.
Camilla's recipes are super balanced in and of themselves, and there's balance between them. But I'm thinking it'd be super easy to push that balance off kilter if we went with a cheese that was like too rich or too domineering or too assertive. And when I think about these Provençal vegetables, and especially when they're at the peak and the height of their season, it sort of makes me think of like a fresh cheese, because that's what you find in Provence, tons of lovely little local goat cheeses. And I'm thinking that's kind of the best way to punctuate the end of this meal that was defined by like so many flavors and textures and a fair amount of richness as well. And so I was thinking specifically of something called a brosotin. So it's this like oblong oval cheese that's one of the rare sheep's milk cheeses that's made in the Loire Valley, which is kind of one of the hearts of goat cheeses in France, along with Provence, which is, of course, where the millefeuille is going to be getting its inspiration from. So the brosotin does have a similar texture to some of the goat cheeses that you might be familiar with. It's kind of dense, it's creamy, it's almost like fudgy in the middle. And then it has this like natural rind all around it with a little bit of funk, a little more assertiveness, a little more of those like fresh milk, hay aromas, barnyardy kind of aromas that you might associate with like a really good sheep's milk cheese. And so, like most fresh cheeses, it is a seasonal cheese. So it's only in season in the spring and summer months. And what I particularly like about it is, especially for this pairing, is that aside from like the lightness and the freshness and the balance of richness and acidity that you're going to get with the cheese in contrast with the other elements of the meal, is that the cheese itself actually has a bit of thyme. Like it has a sprig of thyme on top of it. It has like thyme kind of going through the cheese, and you get sort of an echo of the thyme that's in Camilla's millefeuille. So it's kind of like a little added bonus of drawing cohesion through the meal itself. So that's kind of my cheese pick for this series of dishes that Camilla has sent us.
Oh, it sounds good. That kind of throws my wine pairing for a loop, but I think
we
can make it work.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Is Paris the most romantic city in the world? It is, but there's much more to its romantic allure than the Eiffel Tower. The Romancing in Paris podcast aims to reveal the true romantic essence of the city. Secret gardens, hidden historic sites, and terribly seductive bars. Join romantic expert and writer Lily Heisey as we discover the city's best romantic spots, ideal for both curious couples and lovers of Paris alike. Ready to experience the real romantic Paris? Tune into the Romancing in Paris podcast every Wednesday on Paris Underground Radio. Visit parisundergroundradio.com/romancing in Paris to listen and subscribe.
And now, back to Chez Toi.
Well, I was thinking, I was looking at duck, I was looking at foie gras, and that takes me to Bordeaux because they love duck and foie gras in Bordeaux, and a lot of the duck and the foie actually comes from southwest France. It comes from Dordogne. It comes from further south, from Gascony. And so I figured a nice red Bordeaux would be really nice, especially if this is kind of a fancy meal.
Right.
You can't go wrong with a nice little Saint-Emilion, maybe a little right bank Bordeaux. But I think that would probably be okay with your cheese too.
I think so too. I think contrary to what a lot of us think in America, and honestly, let's be quite frank here, even if you're in France and you're not like a superfood nerd, a lot of the time people are going to erroneously pair like a really lovely but tannin heavy wine like a Bordeaux with cheese because they're eating cheese at the end of the meal and they've already had this beautiful Bordeaux through their meal. They've eaten it with their food and it's still open. It's still on the table. And so they keep drinking it with their cheese. But the problem is that the tannins in red wine can sort of fight with the proteins in cheese, and it's like a bad relationship. They bring out the worst in each other.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of times when people are drinking red wine with cheese that isn't the best. I mean, I think in this case, If it were goat cheese, I would definitely steer away from red. I think because it's a sheep's cheese, and it's not fully fresh, is it? Does it age a little bit?
It ages a little bit. Like it's a bit entre deux, like between the two, as we would say in France. It's going to still have that creaminess to it. But I think that you might be okay. I think that sheep's milk tends to have, it does have this kind of hay-y quality about it. And it also is very high. It's a little higher in fat than goat cheese. So I think it could survive the tannins. I think it would be okay.
Not all Bordeaux is super tannic either.
That's
There's
true.
a lot of quality levels in Bordeaux. The more expensive ones are going to be. If I'm on the right bank, so Bordeaux, we have left bank, right bank is broad strokes. Left bank is going to be Cab dominated. Right bank is Merlot. And so those do tend to be a little softer. They tend to have slightly fewer tannins. They're a little more voluptuous and juicy, which I really like. But, we don't have to go for a €100 bottle that's going to be really, really rich and tannic. We can go for a €15 bottle or even a €7 bottle that is going to be a little lighter and easier to drink.
Yeah. And the other option always is I love if I'm having like even if I'm sticking with a really tanniny Bordeaux with my meal, if I'm then going to move on to cheese, you can always open another bottle. You can pour yourself a glass of something else. If you're really feeling like your wine is fighting with your cheese, you don't have to make them fight with each other.
White Bordeaux could be really good too, because foie gras, the classic pairing is Sauterne, which is also from Bordeaux. That's a sweet wine, which would be great with the deviled eggs. But I think you could just go for white Bordeaux. White Bordeaux comes from generally, a lot of it comes from Entre-deux-Mers, which is neither the right bank nor the left bank, but in between the two. And that's where most of it comes from. And it is a combination of Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon, and they really are wonderful. A lot of them are oaked, which is delightful, and they're not very expensive because they're not that cool right now. So you can get really great white Bordeaux for like $20, €20. And it's awesome. I think that would be really good with this. And that would be really good with the cheese too, because it's grassy, it's fruity, it has a lot going on. It has a little bit of creaminess from oak and maybe a little bit of kind of caramelly flavors, which would be really good with the foie gras and the richness there. So, just go for a Bordeaux party.
Yeah, Bordeaux party. I mean, if you did have a white Bordeaux or a red Bordeaux with your main, and then you did want to go to Sauterne for dessert, then I would say you can go with something even more like the Brossotin is delicious, but it's still fairly mild. But what's awesome with a Sauterne, like if you want to see something crazy, like I remember once I went to a vineyard, and I know a lot of them do this, where they like give you a glass of port and they're like, drink your port, now have a bite of chocolate, and then drink your port again. And like your mouth changes and you're like, what's happening in my mouth? And if you want to see that happen with cheese and wine, like Sauterne and a really amazing blue cheese, like a Roquefort, is wild to see how those two play together, because the Roquefort is like a sheep's milk blue, super funky, super salty, super assertive. And then the Sauterne has that like honey sweetness to it. And they like those two that's a good couple. They bring out the best in each other.
That does sound amazing.
God, I love cheese.
I love wine and cheese. I love Roquefort, actually. I think Roquefort is my favorite cheese in the whole wide world.
I think Roquefort might be I have to say I'm having a current love affair with a blue from your region, which is the Bleu du Vercors. I am just
it's pretty random.
I can't get over it. It's so
it's
good.
It's different. It's like chewy because it's got a cooked paste, right?
Yeah, it's like semi-pressed. It's
pressed,
chewy.
I mean.
Yeah.
It's like chewy blue, which is weird.
It's like if you imagine a Baby Bell that got left out in the sun that was also a blue cheese.
I don't know how I feel about that description, but
it's good. Accurate.
It is good.
Well, thank you, Camilla, for those recipes. And I want to know where you're buying your raspberry flavor pearls, because that seems like a thing that's tough to find. But I mean, I bet it lends a nice little pop of acidity and sweetness to the dish. So it's kind of cool.
I wonder if you could do a little sprinkle of like freeze-dried fruit on top.
Yeah. Oh, that would be good.
That could work.
Yeah.
That could work.
Or if you were feeling really like you could pull a raspberry apart into its individual pieces.
With tweezers.
With tweezers, exactly. Because
tweezers.
During lockdown, that would have been a thing you could do. Yep. We're all too busy for that now. But we didn't used to be busy.
Nope.
Not at all.
Oh, man.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And feel free to send us your most gastronomically inspired, your haute cuisine recipes, but also do not be ashamed of sending us a recipe for something like a bowl of macaroni and cheese because we are here for that.
I want a pear mac and cheese. Please, someone send us mac and cheese.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you soon.
See you soon. Cheers.
A big thank you to Camilla Furman for today's recipes. To learn more about the recipe featured today and to see photos of the meal, please go to parisundergroundradio.com.
To have your recipe featured in an upcoming episode of Chez, please email us at parisundergroundradio@gmail.com.
You can find me, Emily Monaco, at Emily_in_France on Instagram and Twitter.
And you can find me, Caroline Connor, at Wine Dine Caroline on all the things.
This episode was produced by Paris Underground Radio. The music is A Night Alone by Track Tribe.
For more about the Chez podcast and podcasts like it, please go to parisundergroundradio.com.
Thanks for listening, and bon appetit.